طيب السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أهلا وسهلا everybody. بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما وأرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه وادخلنا برحمتك في عبادك الصالحين آمين يا رب العالمين. Ahlan wa sahlan. Welcome everybody for our new fiqh series, Fiqh of Financial Transactions. This is going to be one of our longer series, inshallah. So hang in there, inshallah. Fiqh al-Buyu' wal-Muamalat is, this is where most people will stop, right? So most people when they study fiqh, they usually finish al-ibadat, right? They finish al-ibadat, and that's where they stop. And fiqh al-ibadat is with the acts of worship. We're going to go through, inshallah, how what that looks like in terms of our fiqh. I can hold this. Bismillah. Yeah. طيب, let's get started. Of course, every time we start a new halqa series or a new section, we like to always remind ourselves on the talab al-ilm, right? Seeking knowledge. It's not easy coming here on a hot day, on the weekend. You're giving up some leisure time, some time with your family. It's always good to remind ourselves. فذكر إن نفعت الذكرى وإن الذكرى تنفع المؤمنين, right? The reminder benefits the believers, right? And طبعا maybe you might have seen the video that was circulating, right? Kind of promoting this class. One of the reasons why this class is going to be important for the average Muslim is because al-Muamalat, just like ibadat, is something that we deal with every day. تمام? So if you are someone who deals with money, someone who has an account, someone who works, you earn money, this is something that becomes obligatory on you. So this is not something optional, if we want to be frank about it. Because the Nabi ﷺ, he told us that طلب العلم فريضة على كل مسلم. طلب العلم فريضة على كل مسلم. That seeking knowledge is obligatory on every Muslim, right? It's obligatory, it's wajib on every Muslim. Now, it doesn't mean that every Muslim has to learn everything and spend their whole life in seeking knowledge and become a scholar. No. What becomes wajib, and when we say wajib, it means if you don't do it, you are sinful, right? What becomes wajib is learning the things, okay, that you deal with, right? So, if someone wants to get married, then it's wajib for him to learn the rulings of nikah, of marriage. Someone becomes baligh, aqil, right? A mukallaf, now he's responsible for prayer now, okay? Your son is now reached 14 years old, he hit puberty. So now he's mas'ool an as-salah, and so it's wajib for him to know how to pray. What else is wajib on him to know? Al-tahara, because al-tahara is required for salah. And so, many of us start working and having money and get into maybe business and we don't really get educated properly on these things. The only thing we know is that riba is haram, and maybe gambling is haram, and that's it. And pork is haram as well. And the rest of the things, it's like a big question mark. تمام? فطلب العلم فريضة على كل مسلم. Seeking knowledge is an obligation. Also, it's good to remind ourselves that when you come here, you're not just sacrificing 1 hour or 1 hour and a half of your time. You are investing in your akhirah, right? And Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, وَإِنَّ الْمَلَائِكَةَ لَتَضَعُ أَجْنِحَتَهَا لِطَالِبِ الْعِلْمِ رِضًا بِمَا يَصْنَعُ. Right, in this gathering right now, you can't see it, we can't see them, but we have yaqeen and certainty that there are angels here. And Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us that there are angels, tawafun. They're searching on earth looking for these halaqat of ilm. Literally, they're looking for them. And so when they find one, they tell the other angels, look, we found halaqat ilm. They're not looking for people watching Netflix, people playing, watching TV, playing cards. I'm not saying whatever that is all haram, but I'm just saying they're looking specifically for these halaqat. And when they find them, they say, hey, come, let's go sit. And they sit and they gather around the people of knowledge, place where Allah is being mentioned, the book of Allah is being studied, and they engulf them with the wings, right? And this is kind of a metaphor, an analogy for the rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala falling down and being surrounded by the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what's beautiful about this, it's a long hadith, but in the end, it is said to the people, قُومُوا مَغْفُرًا لَكُمْ. And this is one of the most amazing deals that anybody can have. قُوم, leave this place with your sins erased. And not just مَغْفُرًا لَكُمْ, قَدْ بُدِّلَتْ سَيِّئَاتِكُمْ حَسَنَاتٍ. You came here with a couple of hundred sayyi'at, bad deeds. You leave with exact opposite, that many good hasanat. So if someone says, you know what, I still don't make money, I'm not rich, I don't deal with money, just the fact that you leave here with the opposite of what you came with sayyi'at, you leave with hasanat, I think that's more than enough to as a reward, as an incentive to come to these halaqat of ilm. And the last hadith, always like to mention, من سلك طريقا يلتمس به علما أو فيه علما سهل الله له به طريقا إلى الجنة. That whoever just takes a path, just gets on the path, and a person coming to the masjid and sitting and listening, he's taking the path of ilm, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make the path to Jannah easy for him. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make our paths to Jannah easy. Ameen. طيب, نبدأ inshallah. So when we look at our fiqh journey, right? If you remember, we said that when we look at fiqh, right? And when we said fiqh is the study of the rulings in Islam, the study of the ahkam or rulings in Islam, we said that generally fuqaha sometimes divide it into 4 sections, 2 sections, 3 sections. A lot of the Hanabila, they will divide it into 4 sections. It just depends on how you look at it, right? Some of them say ibadat, mu'amalat, that's it. Ibadat, the acts of worship, the things that you deal with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and everything else, mu'amalat, that you deal with the creation, right? So one half is you dealing with Allah, and the other half you dealing with the creation. The other groups, they said, we'll separate the second half into few parts because there's a lot of things under mu'amalat. You're including transactions, financial transactions, contracts, family law, criminal law, and judicial procedure, right? Al-qada, right? What does a judge do? The conditions for a judge and how does he judge, etc. So where we are now, alhamdulillah, we finished fiqh al-ibadat, tahara, salah, zakah, sawm, hajj. We skip jihad, we'll come to it later inshallah. But we have next transactions and contracts, okay? And now this transactions and contracts, actually it's one of the bigger parts of fiqh. It's one of the bigger parts of fiqh. And actually, I was just kind of looking through the book. This will, once we finish ibadat, the muamalat, will be done more than half, like 60-70% of our book, because there's so many things to cover. So this is not going to be 3 weeks, 1 month. This could take us, I don't know, till winter, sometime in the end of 2025, bi'idhnillah ta'ala, because there's a lot of content to go over. And a reminder, this is a Mukhtasar. This is a beginner fiqh book, right? And we decided to pick this one because our goal from these halaqas is what? Is for every Muslim to be able to go through all the chapters of fiqh, to have a holistic view, a drive-through and understanding of fiqh. It's not going to make you a faqih, it's not going to give you the ability to do fatwa, but it's going to give you an understanding of a holistic view of the Sharia. طيب. And so after this one, all we would have left is family law, okay? Nikah, talaq, and all those chapters. And then basically al-hudud wal-jinayat, criminal law, right? The part that is always mentioned on the news. This is what Islam is, right? This is usually the last studied part. And al-qada, judiciary procedure. طيب. Bismillah. So again, we are studying the kitab Akhsar al-Mukhtasarat, which is a Hanbali book. The author is Ibn Balban, rahimahullah. He's a Hanbali scholar, right? From from the Salihiyya region of Damascus. He was known for his knowledge for hadith and fiqh, including mastery of the 4 schools, his acts of worship, and his abstinence. And this is one of the amazing things about these ulama that wrote these books. Many of them were masters of all the schools of fiqh. But and that's what makes their works so profound and so amazing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put so much barakah in their work. Almost 1,000 years ago. طيب, Bismillah. So let's begin. Introduction. So inshallah today what we want to cover, it's an introduction for this huge chapter. We want to talk about the difference between ibadat and mu'amalat. This will help us have a better understanding and a better way at looking at the rulings in mu'amalat, because they're going to be, you're going to have to look at them differently than ibadat, and we'll see why. We'll talk about wealth, business, and Islam. What's the philosophy in Islam? This is all kind of introduction for us to, when we go into the fiqh of mu'amalat, of financial transactions, we have an idea of this chapter and this unit. Next, we're going to go talk about the goals of Sharia and financial transactions. What's the Sharia trying to achieve, in this chapter of Muamalat? What's it trying to avoid, right? If you understand the overall picture, then when you see the rulings, you'll see why they made that ruling. So, مثلا, if we say that, one of the things that the Sharia looks for in financial transactions is the avoidance of Gharar. Okay, the avoidance of Gharar, speculation or speculative trades. Okay. And so when you see something like, oh, this is haram, you'll be like, why is it haram? Oh, because it has gharar. So when you understand the main things why that the Sharia looks for in transactions, then you'll be able to understand a lot of the ahkam, right? Because when we study an introductory fiqh book, you've noticed so far we don't go through too much dalil. We don't, right? Like the book I have here, we have footnotes. Sometimes I'll mention a hadith, sometimes I'll mention ayah, right? But generally, we're going through ahkam, because if we're going to go through the dalils, it will take us a year just to finish, muamalat, and that would take forever. Then we want to go to kind of the definition of bay' or buyu', sales. What's a bay'? What's linguistically and shar'an, istilahan, technically, and then we'll talk about the pillars of a transaction. And that will basically get us to the beginning of the book, which will probably start at the beginning of next week. طيب. Bismillah. So when I say ibadat and mu'amalat, what do you think about? I want to hear from you guys. When you hear ibadat and mu'amalat, فضل. So ibadat, acts of worship. Acts of worship, okay, like salah, saum, zakah, hajj, right? So these are all ibadat. Okay. طيب, when you hear mu'amalat, what do you understand from that? نعم? Okay. So al-mu'amala is interaction, right? Yeah, and تتعامل مع شخص, to interact with someone. So everything in the Sharia that has to do with interacting with others, you can consider it mu'amalat, right? And that's why in some books of fiqh, they will say mu'amalat, it's everything else. Okay. Some will say, al-mu'amalat, and they'll be specific. We're going to talk about buyu', okay, sales and contracts, right, etc. طيب, what are some things that are different about them? Ibadat and mu'amalat. If I was to ask you, what's some differences between them? So ibadat are with Allah and mu'amalat are with the creation of Allah. Okay, Jamil. What else?
Al-ibadat is done in public or in private, but mu'amalat is always it's public.
You're saying that ibadat, there's public and private, and mu'amalat is mainly with people, it's public. طيب, what about the mu'amalat, like, at-tatfif, cheating, deceiving? That could be private, someone selling something that is broken or cheated, maghshush, right? Remember the story of when Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu was, he was roaming in Medina, and he heard the mother and her daughter talking about laban, right? The halib, the milk. She was mixing milk with what? With water, right? Why? So she can sell more, make more money, right? And the daughter is telling her mom, no, mom, you shouldn't do that, right? What did she tell her? She told her, what if Omar sees you? Or no, the mother said, Omar is not here. Omar can't see us, right? And the daughter, I'm paraphrasing here, she said, Allah can see, right? And so right away when Abu al-Khattab heard that, he's like, this is a good girl. So he went to his sons and he said, one of you should marry this girl, subhanAllah. Because he saw taqwa. That's what taqwa is, right? To have you recognize and you are conscious of Allah even in the ghaib. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَخْشَوْنَ رَبَّهُمْ بِالْغَيْبِ لَهُمْ مَغْفِرَةٌ وَأَجْرٌ عَظِيمٌ كبير. طيب, so it can be in public too. So let's go through some of the things. So al-ibadat, we said they're acts of worship that regulate, you guys can see that, yeah, the relationship between the servant and Allah Azza wa Jal, performed as a form of devotion, submission, regardless of whether their wisdom is fully understood. So this is one of the differences. The wisdom, al-hikmah, is not always mentioned in ibadat. Most of the time it's not. What do I mean by that? Yani Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, pray Fajr 2 rak'ahs. Okay? And pray Dhuhr 4. Someone might say, well man, Fajr, we have free time, there's no work. Fajr should be 4. And Dhuhr, because we're busy, it's work, I have to take a break, 15 minutes, it should be 2. You're using your logic. Can you use your logic in ibadat? You can't. A lot of the times, the wisdom or the hikmah is not mentioned, right? The hikmah is not mentioned. So in salah, like I mentioned, like Sawm, fasting, how come we only fast 30 days? How come it's Ramadan? How come it's not like Muharram, that it's obligatory to fast, right? How come from sunrise to sunset? All these questions, right? You can kind of try to say, oh, it's good for your body, all those, weird conclusions that you can have. You might be correct, but at the end of the day, why 2.5%? Like, is there some special formula in zakah? Why the one of a 40th that should be? Tab Hajj, how come Hajj only once, right? So these are all things that are we perform them with submission. They really, they're very focused on al-istislam, right? To submit yourself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, no questions asked, right? Al-ittiba'. When we talk about mu'amalat, right? Rules that govern interactions and transactions between people in daily life, especially related to wealth, contracts, and social dealings, aimed at achieving justice and preventing harm, right? So buying and selling, bay', renting, al-Ijara, partnerships, right? Shirka, loans, qard, right? Marriage, right? Because we said under mu'amalat, you can include also al-nikah, marriage, right? And court rulings. So these are all things that, and you'll see that when we talk about mu'amalat, the illah, the effective cause this is a word used in usul al-fiqh. What's the illah? Anybody know what the illah is? So a reason is a sabab, and some of the usuliyin, they differentiate between a sabab and a illah. Now we can say a sabab is a reason or the cause of something, but al-illah is the effective cause, and al-illah is important. Okay, why? Because the illah is what is used for qiyas. Why? What's this important for? Do you remember we said that when we started fiqh? We said that the adillah of fiqh, the proofs of fiqh are 4 that have been agreed upon. What are they? The Quran and the Sunnah, the Hadith, right? And ijma', the consensus of the ulama, and al-qiyas, analogy, al-qiyas. Well, qiyas, it comes 4th in the order, right? So you'll find that in buyu' we have much less ahadith, much less, verses about rulings. Okay? So that means that qiyas is used a lot. And in order for you to do analogy qiyas, you need to know the illah, the effective cause. What does that mean? When we look at khamr, okay, we have a ruling, we have dalil that khamr is what? What's the hukum of khamr, of alcohol? Haram. طيب. Al-illah is what? What's the effective? Because it makes you what? Intoxicated. Tamam? It makes you intoxicated. So this is the effective cause, the illah. Okay? Now, if I want to do qiyas is what are you doing? You're finding something with a similar illah and give it the same hukum. Otherwise, how are you going to make marijuana muharram? How did they make marijuana impermissible? Because they went to it and they said, oh, it has the same illah as al-khamr. Okay? And so now we can give it the same hukum as al-khamr. Does that make sense? So there's a lot of qiyas, a lot of analogy, okay, used in mu'amalat. You'll see that a lot in mu'amalat because we don't. Do you have a hadith on Bitcoin? Like, do you have a hadith on on all these? And one, al-buyu' is growing so fast. Every day there's a new, financial instrument. Just the changing from going from silver and gold to actual cash, right? Fiat money, that was a big change, right? And so to be able to give rulings to these things that are evolving and changing, right? These masail mu'asira, you need qiyas, okay? So in the mu'amalat, there's a lot, you have to make sure that you understand the effective cause, the illah of the hukum. طيب, Jamil. Another thing, when we look at ibadat, they say that al-aslu fil ibadat at-tahrim. If you understand these two rules I'm going to give you, you'll understand the big difference. Al-aslu, right? The default ruling in worship is at-tahrim. What does that mean? In acts of worship, al-ibadat, okay, the default is that everything is haram. Everything is haram. Unless the Sharia comes or you have a dalil for it. What does that mean? Yani if someone starts breakdancing here in the masjid and says, well, I'm going to get some ajr for that. This is my dhuhr salah. I'm going to do four spins, yeah? طيب, this is halal or haram? What is this called in Sharia? What is this called in Sharia? Huh? The B word. Bid'ah. Yeah, this is bid'ah, right? This is a bid'ah because you're innovating something in worship. So everything in ibadat is haram. You cannot come up with that ibadah. It's not allowed for you. So it's very strict. So logically, obviously, you need more hadith and more ayat. So that's why you will find more ayat and more hadith in the ibadat. So al-aslu fil ibadat at-tahrim hatta yadul dalil ala al-ibaha. Unless there's a dalil for it. So if anybody is going to come and claim that we're going to get reward or sin for something in ibadat, you better have a proof, right? You need a proof for that, right? And you cannot do qiyas like that for no reason, right? A lot of the things that don't have a illah, impossible. You cannot do qiyas on that. طيب. So that's the main thing. So it must be done exactly as revealed, cannot add, remove or change, right? That's why the ulama are very careful when it comes to ibadat, to as-salah. Right, they're very specific. Even when we studied fiqh, like if you go to the more advanced books, we're talking about hands here, hands there, like very specific. Move your finger. You might say, is that a big deal? Well, they were so specific because they understood that they don't want to fall into bid'ah. Do you understand? That's why they were so strict in the ibadat, to the point they're like, oh, he moved it many times, or he moved it 3 times, or he cupped it up and then he put it down, and so that's why you find a lot of kind of strictness in the ibadat, right? And it's based on ta'abbud. At-ta'abbud is a word you hear a lot in ibadat. Ta'abbud ish yani you say this is shay ta'abbudi. Ta'abbudi yani we don't know why we do it. Like we don't know why it's 4 rak'ahs. So we know why khamr is haram, right? We know why. If someone wants to tell you why khamr is haram, because it intoxicates, and intoxication makes you lose your aql, right? And then you cannot make decisions, etc. But if someone tells you why 4 rak'ahs, you say, خلاص, هذا تعبدي, right? Devotion, out of devotion you submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. طيب, when it comes to mu'amalat, what would you think the ruling, the principle is? If we said that al-aslu fil ibadat at-tahrim, what's al-asl fil mu'amalat? Al-ibaha. Al-aslu fil ibadat al-ibaha. Meaning that the asl, the default ruling in transactions is permissibility. So if somebody comes to tell you that Bitcoin is haram, the burden of proof is on who? The guy who's saying it's haram. Al-asl, it's mubah. Al-asl, trading in Bitcoin, is mubah. Okay? So when it comes out, it's mubah until somebody can come and say, well, there's a hadith here, there's an ayah here that shows that XYZ is this, and that's why it's haram. Does that make sense? So if some new financial, instrument comes out tomorrow, the asl is that it's mubah. We start with al-ibaha. Okay, we start with al-ibaha. So al-aslu fil mu'amalat al-ibaha hatta yadul dalil ala al-tahrim. Right. So what does that mean? It's more flexible. And actually, what's interesting, the Hanabila, the Hanbalis are the most flexible in the buyu', right, in transactions. They are the most, you'll see the most flexible in contracts, right? And you'll see the concept of at-taradi, okay? At-taradi minkum, right? In the Quran, you hear this word at-taradi, right? Don't eat each other's wealth, okay, without having at-taradi, right? The mutual consent. And that's a concept that the Hanabila use a lot, that if you have consent, a lot of things will become okay, permissible, right? They're very flexible on that. And you'll see that the benefit, the manfa'a, is also a big concept in the mu'amalat. It's only forbidden if it contains haram, injustice or violation of Sharia. We'll talk about it in one of the slides coming up, inshallah. But you'll see that the mu'amalat, there's only a few things you have to avoid. It's like Allah saying, go drive, go to the suq, but just pay attention to those signs, to the gharar, to the riba, to the dhulm, and a few other things. That's it. Other than that, everything is pretty much fair game. Okay, based on maslaha, benefit, and adl. It is based on maslaha and adl. Maslaha, the benefit, the overall benefit of the society, right? So you'll see that you praying the way you pray, etc. It really is just between you and Allah, right? But when we talk about the prohibition of riba, this is an overall maslaha of the whole society, right? The prohibition of al-maysir, gambling. There's a huge maslaha of making it impermissible. When we talk about the tahrim of khamr, يسألونك عن الخمر والميسر قل فيهما إثم كبير ومنافع للناس. إثم كبير منافع للناس. إثم كبير, a huge negative consequence, إثم, sin, and there's منافع, a few benefits. But what's in Sharia, if the maslaha outweighs the mafsada, right, or the harm outweighs the benefit, then we stay away from it, right? This is a qa'idah in the Sharia. So now we understand ibadat, mu'amalat. Ibadat, the default is what? What's the default in ibadat, in acts of worship? At-tahrim. And what's the default in mu'amalat? Al-ibaha. It's permissible. Okay? That is the asl. We start from there. Some interesting facts. This is just something I was listening to Dr. Hatem al-Hajj. He was talking about one of the books that that most of the colleges of Sharia they study. One of the books of hadith is called Bulugh al-Maram. Bulugh al-Maram. It's a book, right? Ibn Hajar collected all the ahadith al-ahkam. Right? So you have Riyadh al-Salihin, for example. It's a comprehensive book of hadith by Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah on everything in the Sharia. But it's not many ahkam in there. Bulugh al-Maram, Ibn Hajar, he came, rahimahullah, and he gathered all the hadith of al-ahkam, or rulings, right? So if someone wanted to study fiqh from a hadith perspective, and that's another way to study, right? Ahl al-hadith, this is the methodology that they study fiqh, is they go through the books of hadith, right? The book of tahara, and then they go through all the hadith and the khilaf between them, and that's a more advanced way of studying fiqh. So in most versions, you'll find 1,578 hadiths in this book. It's a big book, right? By the way, how many hadith does Bukhari have? Average, huh? 5,000 to 6,000. Okay, so just to understand, this is, and it's a big book, and many students of knowledge will memorize this book because most of the adilla are in it. Most of the evidences are in this book. So if you look here, tahara, this is an estimation. In tahara, 130 hadith, right? That's the percentage here. Salah, 300 hadith. Zakah, Sawm, Hajj, 200 hadith. In total, how many hadith you have here? 500, 630, right? These are estimations. 630. What's the percentage here? If you add them, 32, 40, right? 40%? Is that correct? Am I doing the right math? So about 40% in ibadat. Look at the buyu'. 170 hadith and only about 10%. Subhanallah. But when you actually look at buyu', it's many more pages, okay? But there's less dalil. Do you understand? So what does this tell you? The flexibility, and that a lot of the ahkam are coming from where? From analogy, from qiyas, okay? Right? And this is something very interesting, you know, when you look at it. That buyu', it's much bigger chapter, okay? It's a pretty big chapter, but only 170 hadith. Versus the ibadat that we just finished, about 600 hadith. Huge difference, like threefold maybe, or four. Tamam? طيب. Jameel, this is just something interesting to look at. طيب, let's start. Let's talk about wealth in Islam. طيب, if I was to ask you, is money good or bad? Money, evil or good?
50-50.
It's 50-50. يعني 50% good, 50% bad. It depends. Okay, so it's not like a set number, 50% good. يعني if I have $100, 50% of it is evil, 50% and of it is... لا. So he's saying that it depends. What do you guys think? What do you think? Is money bad, or is it money evil or good? It depends on who's using it. Depends on the day of the week, the season, the country. Is it rialat versus dollars? If you use Canadian dollars, it's what? طبعا when we say wealth, we talk about everything like.
It is halal, it is good. It is halal, it is good.
When we look at the Quran, تفضل, you want to say something? Yeah.
I want to say something. Wealth is not only money. Wealth could be knowledge. Wealth could be a wife. Wealth could be kids.
So the word in Arabic, ghina, like wealth, it can be used as ghina. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says, ولكن الغنى غنى النفس. Like the real wealth is the wealth in the nafs, in the soul. It's not about how much stuff you have. Yeah. كثرة الغرض, right? It's not about كثرة الغرض, how much stuff you have, how many cars you have. But the real wealth is غنى النفس. And this is not something nice or cute to say, just to make the broke people feel good. No, this is something, and Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he means it. And those people who have gained wealth, maybe those who come from wealth, or maybe those who came from poverty and gained wealth, will understand this concept. That if you don't have ghina nafs, money is not going to give you that. This is what you have to understand. If you don't have contentment and happiness inside, then if somebody threw $1 million at you today, it's not going to give you that. That's what it means. Lakin, and this is, I heard this from one of our teachers, rahimahullah, Sheikh Muhammad al-Sharif. He said that if you want to understand money, this is a very good analogy. He said it's like a magnifying glass. A magnifying glass, right? When you want to see something, what does it do? What does it do? What does a magnifying glass do? It zooms in and makes something bigger. What does that mean? If I take an evil person and I give him money, what's that going to do to him? It's going to amplify his evil. Instead of smoking weed, he will smoke crack or cocaine or something, right? Instead of committing murder of one person, he'll commit 20 murders or whatever. I'm being an extreme here, but and then look at someone who is good, right? And then Allah gives him wealth. What's it going to do? And that's why they tell you, the shaitan comes and says, don't give sadaqah. Give sadaqah when you're rich. If you don't give sadaqah now, you're never going to give sadaqah. And that's why the person who gives sadaqah when he doesn't have much, he will give sadaqah, much more sadaqah when he's wealthy. Because sometimes you'll see people, you're like, how can you not give $1,000? You have $1 million. It's nothing for you, right? But because aslan he was not someone who is kareem, not someone who used to give, for money, having more money did not make him kareem. Having more money doesn't make you generous. Do you understand what I mean? And so obviously it makes sense, okay, that money does not give you happiness. But if you are happy internally and Allah gives you money, if you have iman and you have contentment and Allah gives you money, then you can do a lot of khair. And we have a hadith to prove that, but I just wanted you to think about it. When we look at some of the ayat in the Quran about mal, and what's interesting in Juz' Amma, you'll see a lot of ayat on that. Give me some examples about money and wealth. In the Quran in general, or maybe, but I said Juz' Amma because a lot of the surahs that you know. Al-mal wal-banuna zinatul hayat ad-dunya, right? That al-mal, wealth, and your children are the adornment of this dunya, of this life, right? These are the things that people love to have, right? People love to show off with, right? زين للناس حب الشهوات من النساء والبنين والقناطير, yeah, gold and silver and women and children, right? What about like ويل لكل همزة لمزة الذي ايش جمع مالا وعدده. Allah is saying ويل, punishment, severe punishment for the person who's همزة لمزة, he spreads يعني rumors and namima, backbites and slanders. But also Allah says الذي جمع مالا وعدده. So is the Quran saying that the one who gathers money, عدده, what does عدده mean? Like he hoards it and he's counting it and he's like Scrooge, basically, right? So the Quran is basically putting down that person. Huh? Look what Allah subhanahu says. Yeah, إنما أموالكم وأولادكم عدو لكم. Yeah, and another ayah fitna, right? They are like an enemy, right? Your money and your children, right? And another ayah fitna. Fitna, it's a test for you. Meaning it could be a test for good or a test for a person does not pass the test. Look at this one. Al-mal wal-banuna, we mentioned this ayah, zinatul hayat dunya. Wal-baqiyatu as-salihatu khayrun 'inda rabbika thawaban wa khayrun amala. This is Surah Al-Kahf. Look here. وَتُحِبُّونَ الْمَالَ حُبًّا جَمًّا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us about the nature of al-insan. Okay? وَتُحِبُّونَ الْمَالَ حُبًّا جَمًّا. In Surah Al-Fajr, Allah says, you love wealth. إيش يعني جمّة؟ يعني شديد. You really love wealth. Right? Nobody here doesn't love wealth. We would do things for wealth, we wouldn't do for any other reason. Right? If you told people, come to Fajr, come 4 o'clock, come and Allah will reward you with XYZ. You will have light on the day of judgment. People will be like, okay, that's nice, I'll try my best, inshallah. But if you say, come, Fajr, they're giving out $1,000. Kul yawm. Kul yawm $1,000. Do you think the numbers will be different of the attendees? Huh? The whole masjid will be packed. Actually, people from Edmonton will come. the people of Edmonton will come, the people from Lethbridge will come. Honestly, right? Yeah, and I'm not exaggerating, right? Because Allah says, وَتُحِبُّونَ الْمَالَ حُبًّا جَمًّا. You really love wealth. And this is nature. And so Sharia came to control that, and to, this is a reality. Allah says, أَلْهَاكُمُ التَّكَاثُرُ. At-takathur is collecting wealth. Competition to have more. Al-kathra is a lot. So you'll see people now, they're competing. So Fulan just got a new house. We haven't got a new house. He just renovated his windows. The husband goes to his wife, let's renovate our windows. How come all of a sudden you want to renovate it? Oh, because the neighbor, and so, he got a new car? Well, we could lease a new car too. And so people compete, right? He's got 3 kids, let's have 3 kids too. This is just the nature. And Allah says, Al-Hakum, it has distracted you from what's really important. Al-Hakum al-Takathur. وَيْلُ لِكُلِّ هُمَزَةٍ لُمَزَةٍ, we mentioned, right? الَّذِي جَمْعَ مَالَ وَعَدَدَ يَحْسَبُ أَنَّ مَالَهُ أَخْلَدَ. He thinks that his money is gonna what? Keep him immortal, live forever, right? يَحْسَبُ أَنَّ مَالَهُ أَخْلَدَ. But like we said, if you really want to understand money is like a magnifying glass. And I think that's one of the best analogies, right? If you are someone who is, and let's talk about also your iman, right? Someone whose iman is very strong, he has ilm, and ilm leads to iman. When you have ilm, when you seek knowledge, right? And you apply knowledge, what is it supposed to do? It's supposed to what? Increase you in iman, right? So if you just learned a dua from the Prophet ﷺ, what is that? That's called ilm, right? You just seek knowledge. But now you need to apply it in order for that to have an effect on your iman. So now you apply that dua. You start doing that dua every morning. So now what? Your iman is increasing. So the person who has ilm, right, and he applies that ilm, okay, when he gets wealth, he knows what to do with it. He knows where to put the wealth. And I'm not getting this from my own head. We have a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ told us that there are 4 kinds of people. There are 4 kinds of people, right? And the 4 kinds of people, the way the Prophet ﷺ described them is knowledge and ilm. So you have 4 combinations, right? Someone who has knowledge and ilm. Someone who has knowledge, someone who has knowledge. So the Prophet ﷺ, let me just make sure I didn't say something wrong. The Prophet ﷺ, when he described the four people, he described them using knowledge and wealth. Knowledge and wealth. Right. So you have a person who has knowledge and wealth. You have a person that has knowledge and no wealth. You have a person that has wealth and no knowledge, and you have a person who doesn't have knowledge nor wealth. Who's the worst one? Who would you say the worst one is? The one with knowledge and wealth, he's the worst? I think you need your cup of coffee. Huh? Who's the worst? So look, the Prophet said, I'm paraphrasing, the one who has knowledge and wealth, he has the knowledge to spend that wealth fi sabilillah. He's paying his zakah, his sadaqah, and this is the kind of people that we want in our community, and this is the kind of people that you want to be, the kind of person that you want to be. Because remember that al-mu'min al-qawi ahabbu ila Allah min al-mu'min al-da'if, right? So the strong believer is more beloved to Allah than the weak believer. Well, you might say in iman, no, but that's not what the hadith is talking about. That's obvious. We don't need to know that. We don't need to know that the one that has more iman is more beloved, right? We don't need to know that, right? But what it means here, al-quwwa fil badan wa fil mal wa fil qudra, right? To the ability, the one who has more ability and more strength, physically, mentally, spiritually, financially. Isn't that Muslim better than the other Muslim? Like if they both have the same iman, right? Who's more beneficial for the community? Right? Yeah, the one who has wealth. How are you going to buy the masajid? How are you going to help the needy? How are you going to, right? The one who's overweight and not healthy and sick, or the one who's healthy and takes care of his health? He's obviously more beloved, if they have the same kind of iman. What was I talking about? We're talking about, So Nabi Sallallahu said, the one who has money and wealth, knowledge and wealth, he has the knowledge to spend the wealth in the proper way. Jamil. Now let's go to the person who has knowledge but no wealth. So he has ilm, he has iman, but he doesn't have a lot of wealth. But because of his knowledge, and listen to this, and his iman, he has a niyyah, and he says to himself, if Allah gave me that wealth, if Allah increased my wealth, I would spend it in his sake. So what does he get? He gets the reward of that action. Subhanallah. Do you see the importance of ilm, right? And the niyyah? He gets the reward of that action. And now look at the counter. Someone who has no knowledge, yani jahil, he's ignorant, right? And he has a lot of wealth. We have a lot of those these days, right? He will spend it in what? He's going to spend it on building masajid. He's probably going to spend a lot of his money on things that are not permissible, right? Or things that are mubah, and he's just wasting it, right? There's not much benefit from that person. And then you have the person who what? You have the person who doesn't have knowledge and he doesn't have ilm. This guy, because he doesn't have knowledge, he looks at the guy who's spending money and having a good time. He says, if I had money, I would spend it in those haram things. So who's really the worst? Is this guy, because he's going to get a bad deed for that. Because he's saying, if I had it, I would do it. And he has the niyyah to do haram. Because he doesn't have knowledge, his niyyah is corrupted. Do you understand? Right? That's why, al-mal, it's not good or bad, it depends on who has it. Right? It depends on who has it. طيب. So now we have an understanding of wealth. Some of the things we look at, and Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, look, because there's a big confusion in the community that people will say, well, it's recommended Islamically to be poor. Okay? So you have a group of people who will look down upon people who have wealth. Right? And they're like, you shouldn't have that much money, man. How come you're driving a nice car? How come you own a big house? Like, you shouldn't have that. Like, they'll make you feel guilty. Tamam. Remember what we said about the law of money, right? If someone has knowledge and iman, and he has wealth, then there's nothing wrong with that. Because his iman and his knowledge will push him to spend it in the right cause. Jameel, give an example from the Sahaba. Give me an example. Huh? Abdurrahman ibn Auf. Like some of the people who were like estimating his tarika, his inheritance that was left, they're talking in millions and billions of current dollars. Right? So, he's a Sahabi, radiallahu anhu. Is he a regular Sahabi? From the 10, like he's from the cream of the crop. From the 10 promised Jannah. Subhanallah. Abdurrahman ibn Auf. Yeah? Right? And this is a person who, he left Mecca, he came to Medina, pretty much what? Pretty much broke. Yeah? Show me where the market is, he said. This is a famous phrase. Yeah? Show me where the market is. And look, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed him, right? For Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he used to actually seek refuge from poverty. One of the du'as we say in the morning is what? Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-kufri wal-faqr. Yeah? Wa a'udhu bika min adhab al-qabr. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-kufri, from disbelief, and faqr. Look, faqr is put next to disbelief. It's ajib, right? If you think about it, try to contemplate. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is seeking refuge from kufr, disbelief, and faqr. Right? Because, for some people, faqr can cause disbelief. Like faqr can push people to do some insane things. Like poverty can lead people. You see what's happening here, subhanAllah, when you watch some of the videos in what's happening in Gaza, right? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help our brothers and sisters there. Like in times of poverty, people steal, people lie, people cheat, people raise prices, right? Because this is تحبون المال حبا جما, right? Al-Faqr is something scary, and Nabi Sallallahu used to seek refuge from Al-Faqr, and that's why some of the ulama said that Al-Faqr Al-Faqir is worse than the Miskeen, because the Prophet used to seek refuge from Al-Faqr. And so, obviously, if he's seeking refuge from Faqr, so Faqr is not something that someone should strive for. Now, you might be in a situation of Faqr, okay, but you should try to because the giving hand is better than the receiving hand. The giving hand is better than the receiving hand. Look at Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says, "Ni'ma al-mal as-salih lil-rajul as-salih." So the Prophet is praising wealth, but what's the condition? That it's with a righteous man. Think about it, like the millions of dollars, how many millionaires and billionaires are on earth? If they were just in the right hands of the right Muslims, imagine how much good can be done. Yeah, and you don't have to sit for 10 years to just fundraise for a masjid. This guy comes and he drops 10 million, and for him a 10 million is what? Wala shay. It's a joke. Yani, if you think about how many millionaires, billionaires, Muslims, right, on earth, they can come here and they can just write you a check, yallah. You can build a whole community with it, right? But unfortunately, a lot of the wealth is with, right, and with the wrong people, right? And you have the people who might have knowledge and iman who look down upon money. They don't want to deal with money. They'll see it as something bad, and that is not healthy for a society, right? But Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he did warn us. He says, "Wallahi, mal faqra akhsha alaykum." By Allah, it is not poverty I fear for you. ولكن أخشى أن تبسط عليكم الدنيا كما بسطت على من كان قبلكم فتنافسوها كما تنافسوها فتهلككم كما أهلكتهم. He says, by Allah, it's not poverty I fear for you. I fear that the world will be open for you. And it happened in the time after the passing of the Prophet, the Muslim Ummah, they had so much wealth, right? And then the Prophet said, "Fatanafasuha," you will start competing for it, right? And when you compete for it and you just focus on it and you love this dunya more than the akhirah, it will destroy you like it destroyed them. We have many hadith and ayat explaining that. طيب. We go now to what are the main things that what are the main things that the Sharia tries to avoid, or the Sharia wants you to avoid when it comes to Muamalat, transactions. So let's look at them, or the buyu'ah. So if you try to summarize them, they're going to be like 4 or 5 things, right? Number 1 is al-Gharar, uncertainty and deception, speculation, right? Uncertainty. This is probably one of the best words to describe it, right? Al-Gharar. And this is why some transactions, okay, like for example, someone tells you, what's an example of gharar? Huh? Give me an example of gharar. Huh? Yeah, like for example, you go to someone, you be like, I want to buy your car. He says, okay, let's agree on that. What's the price? Oh, the price is, I'm going to put like 5 numbers high, and whatever number you throw at, that will be the price. Okay? Uncertainty. We don't know we don't know the price here. So this is gharar, because now we don't know the price of what you're agree upon, right? So there has to be. Now, is gharar 100% avoidable? No. The Sharia will allow some small amount of gharar, okay, that will go back to the faqih, okay, but something very small, okay, that the Sharia will allow, okay. But we're going to go into details about it, but I just want you to understand gharar. What are some famous transactions that are not allowed because of gharar?
Insurance.
Huh? Insurance. You said riba, not riba. Huh? Like imagine gambling. Why? What's the biggest problem with gambling is what? Because like there's so much gharar. Like it's like this guy, because it is a transaction, right? You're putting money into, like, let's say these machines, right? You put money into it. The guy next to you is putting money into it. It's a transaction but this guy might leave with $1 million, and this guy is gonna leave with minus 100,000, right? It's just, and you don't know what you're getting back. So let's say it costs $5 to play the game, but you don't know what you're getting back. So there's a lot of uncertainty in those things. And the problem is, when you have uncertainty, what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen when you have uncertainty? People get upset. They're gonna fight. They're gonna be a lot of problems between people, right? And so the Sharia wants to avoid that. Another thing that is dhulm, injustice, right? If there's dhulm in a contract, then it will not be valid. Okay? مثلا in some housing contracts, they'll tell you, okay, let's do musharaka, let's do partnership. But in a partnership, the both partners are supposed to what? Are supposed to be responsible or accept the profit and accept what? The loss. صح? This is what if someone says in the contract, we're going to do musharaka, we're going to do partnership, and if we profit, we'll share our profits. If we lose, only you will lose. We'll only deduct from your share. What do you think about that? Dhulm. Okay. This is where some of them said no, as long as they both agree. But al-asl here is dhulm. The asl here, dhulm, they'll say, well, no, even if he agrees upon it, right? And that's why even when we talk about pricing, profits, and even the Sharia has a cap on that. Like, you cannot just, even some fuqaha put numbers, right? Like the percentages of profit. You're not allowed to charge some extravagant amount. Like some of for example, if you read about some of the drugs that were patented for insulin, right? For diabetics, right? And I think he was put in jail. But they'll patent something, okay, and then they'll sell it for like thousands of percentage of profit. Who's being hurt here? Huh? Everybody, all the patients, okay, just so this guy can become filthy rich, right? And so the Sharia will look at that and be like, no, that's not acceptable. Like, it's not acceptable for someone to have such a dhulm, injustice, oppression. And that's why even monopolies, when we talk about monopolies, right? What's a monopoly? When one organization or company, right, controls the prices. That's also something that the Sharia looks down upon. Because the Sharia wants an open market, wants that invisible hand to have competitive pricing. It doesn't want one entity to control prices. Because who's gonna, even from an economics point of view, right, the dead loss here is from what? The society, right? They're the ones that are gonna be hurting or suffering the most, right? Your question is one of the two parties allowed to accept dhulm for himself? We'll talk about that inshallah. That's something that will come up. So does it make it halal now that I accept dhulm? Because it's the same question as riba. So you might say, for example, okay, I want to have a savings account, or I want to get a mortgage, okay, conventional mortgage. In a conventional mortgage, you have to pay interest, right? طبعا this interest is not the same level of sin as the interest of the one who takes money. You guys understand? Like they're not the same level of tahreem. The one who's paying the riba is not the same as the one who's gaining the money, right? Because in the ayat of Surah Al-Baqarah, that's the one that's mentioned, the one that's actually charging riba. The one who's paying the riba, okay, it's a bit less, but it's still a major sin. So someone might say, well, I accept it. It's okay. On the house, I'll pay the interest. So does it make it halal? Right? That's the question. And then
the riba is not because it's haram, it's wrong, right? The riba said this is haram.
طب Allah حرم الظلم.
Yeah, but dhulm is part of it. It's not the whole.
Okay, we'll talk about that. And then we have haram products. In and of itself, they're haram. So this is what we're talking about. Like for example, what's haram in and of itself? Alcohol, pig, pornography, drugs. Anything that is haram in and of itself, then you cannot sell it or buy it. Does that make sense? So anything that is haram in and of itself, you cannot sell it itself or benefit from it. Okay? So these are the things, really these are the things that you have to look for. Okay? When it comes to gharar, let's quickly go through them. Uncertainty. So this refers to any transaction where the outcome is unknown or unclear, or when one party is unfairly disadvantaged to lack of clarity, right? Somebody is gonna get cheated, usually, and somebody's gonna be upset because the Sharia wants. I want you to understand. The Sharia wants that when you do a transaction, both parties are what? Have taradi. I'm happy. I'm happy I gave you $5,000 for the Honda Civic. I'm happy. And he's happy that I sold the Honda. I need the money and you need the car, and we both benefited. Alhamdulillah. And we have a hadith where the Prophet says that the transaction where both parties are happy has more barakah in it. The transactions where both parties are happy has more barakah in it. And so if you try to think that you tricked someone by selling them your car that has, a hidden defect that you didn't tell them about, if you think that you got away and saved $1,000, think again, because the barakah is going to be stripped from that. Okay? So examples include selling something you don't own or possess. This is where a lot of people will question the whole model of dropshipping. Selling something that you don't own. Are you allowed to do that? So that's something that we have to discuss. Contracts with ambiguous terms. Like they'll mention things that are very general. They're ambiguous. They're not clear. Okay, so that has gharar. Okay, it could be تفضل. Okay, and then gambling, right? And speculative transactions. Like a lot of the contracts that will depend on, and this is why some of the ulama they were very reluctant about مثلا bitcoins, because there was a lot of fluctuations. So there's a lot of fluctuation and gharar in that transaction. Is it valid? Well, that's something that the ulama have to, or alim would have to look at. Riba, obviously, this is all, everybody knows about riba. But when you look at riba, we have riba duyun, which is the riba of the mortgage, right? That everybody is familiar with. But you also have riba riba nasi'a, right? Riba nasi'a, and we have riba what? Riba al-fadl, right? And so we'll go through them, the differences. But there's a lot of common ribas mistakes that people commit, like that I mentioned in the video, right? Somebody goes to a jewelry shop, and they want to buy a necklace, and so they don't have the full cash for it, so they'll pay 50%, and then the rest they'll pay after. Is this a permissible transaction? You go to a jewelry shop, okay, and you want to buy a necklace that's worth $4,000. You only have $2,000. So the guy says, no problem, man, give me the $2,000 and pay the other $2,000 in the following months. So you say, okay, no problem. You take the necklace, you pay 2,000, and then you have an agreement to pay the other 2,000. Is this valid Islamically? Valid, right? No, it's not valid. That's what I'm talking about. So this would be considered riba nasi'a. And we'll talk about it. Why is this? And a lot of you are shocked because you're like, I've done that so many times. Now, this example is in dhahab and fidda. Because al-dhahab wal-fidda is currency. Dhahab wal-fidda is considered money. Okay? The hadith about riba, right? Al-milhu bil-milh, al-burru bil-burr. The hadith of Ubadah ibn Samit about riba, the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam mentioned yadan biyad. It has to be on the spot. If it's from the same commodity, it has to be yadan biyad. When we get to the chapter of riba, we'll talk about it, but it has to be yadan biyad. What does that mean? So if I'm trading gold with gold, it has to be on the spot. That's why forward markets are challenging the gold, right? The gold markets. If you're buying gold and you're not getting milkiya of it, if you're not gonna get the gold right now, there's a problem with it. Now, someone might say, well, if you get a piece of paper that claims that it's yours in that position, maybe that might be valid. But if you don't have possession of it, okay, in whichever way, then it wouldn't be counted. Then you wouldn't be allowed. It would be a type of riba. So when it comes to things, so these are common mistakes that people commit, and they don't know about. But it's different between a car, right? That's why you can pay installments for a car, right? Because it's not money with money. You know what I mean? And the same thing, like for example, like you'll see examples in the books of fiqh. They're not very relevant right now. But if you remember, if you read the old books of economics and books of transactions, how did people used to interact before? Barter system, right? What's a barter system? What's a barter system?
I think you trade something for something.
Yani the fallah, the farmer, used to have goat, sheep, milk, meat, chicken, eggs, whatever. And then you have the guy who used to be, مثلا, a goldsmith. He had, he would make cups and plates and whatever. So there's no money, right? So what would they do? They would trade. They'd be like, I'll give you, you want a plate? I'll give you a plate, a metal plate or a metal, a container for, 2 chickens or something like that. This is called the barter system. That's what people used to do. Then somebody said, you know what? We need money. We need something. So now they started using gold, right? And then over time, there wasn't enough gold. Yeah, some countries said we want to be able to spend more money. So they introduced fiat money, the cash, right? The actual paper money. That paper money was backed by gold. But then after the gold standard, right? Nixon, the US president, he came and said, no, it's not going to be backed by gold now. So now we have more money that is being spent. We have less money that is being spent. So مثلا, money that is physically circulating is less than the actual money that is actually being spent, if that makes sense. So the financial industry is a whole disaster because we have a lot of the money that is owned by people. It's not real money, right? It's just digits. It's not real money. But governments and countries have given it power, right? When you study the financial system, your brain will just explode. Like how is that possible? That we only have this much. I'm not talking about the gold. Forget the gold. That's already been thrown on the side. Actual cash, it's not even like, I don't even think it's 50% of what is actually out there, right? From the actual digital, and that's why the Bitcoin movement was so strong, because they said, well, Bitcoin, it's limited, okay? It can be used. It's not controlled by anybody, etc., etc., etc. Right? Al-Muhim. So riba, there's lots of types of riba. Al-dhulm, right? Injustice, right? Cheating. وَيْلٌ لِلْمُطَفِّفِينَ الَّذِينَ إِذَا اكْتَالُوا عَلَى النَّاسِ يَسْتَوْفُونَ. Allah promised punishment for al-mutaffifin. Who are al-mutaffifin? الَّذِينَ إِذَا اكْتَالُوا عَلَى النَّاسِ يَسْتَوْفُونَ. When they sell to people, okay, when they want to buy from people, they want to add extra. Come on, man, put a few more apples. Put more, just give me extra. وَإِذَا كَالُوهُمْ أَوْ وَزَنُوهُمْ يُخْسِرُونَ. When they're the ones that are trading or selling, they'll put some rocks to make it look like it's more, or they'll put like some bad things, or they want to decrease from it, right? This is at-tatfif, cheating, right? Cheating in weights or measurements, withholding critical information. How many people here have sold a car? Sold a car? Who's sold a vehicle before? right? Isn't it tempting to just not mention the uyub? Right? It's tempting, right? And it's tempting to not mention that, you know, the seat is ripped from the side, or that the whatever, the shaft in the engine, okay, the guy told you 1 year it's going to be gone. You're not. It's tempting to not mention that, but part of the honesty of the Muslim is to mention those things. Is to mention, you know what, I'm selling this car and it has this problem and this problem and this problem and this was broken. I changed the engine. You know, the radiator was changed. Oh, this one is not actually from the company. This is something that is tijari, yani whatever. What's tijari? Like it's not from the company. It's not asli, right? Aftermarket, yeah. Yeah. Okay. I have the Arabic terms, not the English one. It's important to know that, right? Monopoly is a type of dhulm, right? Price manipulation, you know, like collusion of companies getting together and causing things to rise and go down, right? Like these things are illegal in many countries, right? You know, like for example, it's in the stock market. You know, someone can't get together and do something intentional, right? To raise the prices so they can benefit themselves. Like these are things that are known, yani, even in the West here. The last one is haram products, right? Prohibited products, right? Like alcohol, right? Pork, drugs, anything that is immoral, right? Anything that facilitates sin. You know, like, are you allowed to make money from fortune telling? Like you see in our countries, you see have the old ladies, they come and they drink the cup of coffee and then they lift it over, and then there's like lines coming down and they're like, oh, you're gonna have a child and then they pay them for that, okay, right? Anybody seen that before? It's very common in the Arab countries, right? Maghreb, right? It's just they drink coffee, the Turkish coffee, yeah, and then they flip the cup upside down, and then like the lines come down, and then they're like, I'll give you $20, tell me what's gonna happen to me, you know? Oh, you're gonna have a child, you're gonna have a job. Oh, you might have a miscarriage. Oh, your husband is going to divorce you. Can you get money for that? No, you can't. Right? And so there's some things you can't get money for. Like the hadith about dogs, getting money from dogs, right? Getting money from other things that would be impermissible. طيب. We're doing it. I think there's like, what, 4 minutes? طيب. We're almost at the end. Now what I want to do is I want to basically go through the definition of bay'a or buyu'. When I say bay'a, okay? Where have you heard this word before? Bay'a. Al-bay'a or buyu'. Huh? In the Quran. Ahsant. Allahu Akbar. And in the hadith. But which ayah? Yeah. وَأَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْعَ ذَلِكَ بِأَنَّهُمْ قَالُوا. If you go back tonight, open the ayat of Riba. Right? ذَلِكَ بِأَنَّهُمْ قَالُوا إِنَّمَا الْبَيْعُ مِثْلُ الرِّبَى. Yeah, I was talking to Sheikh Hassan the other day, and you know, like you guys who attended here the Mudarabah, right? Right. So you get people that will say it's the same thing. It's the same thing as the conventional mortgage. ذلك بأنهم قالوا إنما البيع مثل الربا. The difference is clear if you understand that Mudarabah is what? It's a bay'a. It's a sale. And the conventional mortgage is what? It's a riba. It's a loan, right? Even here in the law, they had to go and change it to make it permissible for banks to make profit from sales. Because the profits of banks come from, conventionally, from loans, from riba, right? That's why some of the ulama, they said that working in a bank is impermissible. Even the janitor, because all the money is from riba. The majority of their money is coming from riba, right? طيب. So al-bay' wa ahalla Allahu al-bay'a wa harrama al-riba. So they used to say, why are you saying this haram? Bay' مثل riba. Yani sales, profit, okay, business is the same as riba. طيب. Allah replied, wa ahalla Allahu al-bay'a wa harrama al-riba. Case closed. Okay, Allah made bay' halal and made what? Riba haram. Okay, so bay'. They say from ba'a, when somebody extends their hand, al-ba' is like a hand, right? Like an arm's length. When they extend the hand, why? They say, well, it's when you extend to give something or to get it back. Or they say when you make a transaction, what usually happens? Yeah, deal, done deal, right? And so that's some of them say that's where it comes. So we see here some of the definitions right here. He says, البيع لغة linguistically, دفع عوض وأخذ مؤوض, right? So yeah, مأخوذ من الباع, right? So they say here when something is given and something is taken between two parties. You give me something, I get something back. So the barter system is that bay'. You give me 5 chickens, I give you an iron container or a shield. Yeah, that's bay'. You're giving something, you're getting something back. Okay, tamam. Now, when you look at the technical definition, right? And I wanted to the one that is mentioned in the books of the Hanabali, يعني, they say مبادلة مال ولو في الذمة أو منفعة مباحة بمثل أحدهما على التأبيد غير ربا وقبض. It's a very specific definition, and when you see why they made it so specific, you'll understand. They say it's مبادلة مال, right? It's the exchange of مال أو منفعة. Okay, so مبادلة مال ولو في الذمة. مبادلة مال, المال is what? So they'll say mal is any commodity that has an actual benefit, because you'll see that some of the fuqaha they made it impermissible to sell something that doesn't have a benefit. Right? What's an example of that? What's something that has no benefit? Huh? Like, is there something useless in your house that has no benefit for it? Huh? PlayStation useless? There's a manfa', there's a benefit from it. So there's a benefit from it. But like garbage. I'm going to sell you garbage. Are you allowed to sell garbage? Like, you go to some gullible person, some naive person, and you say, man, I'll give you 2 bags of garbage for $20. Be like, yeah, man. Are you allowed to do that? Most of the fathers say no, because there's no, but you say, well, he agreed. Well, maybe he's jahil, or maybe he's miskeen, And this happens a lot, right? Sometimes the other party has no idea. I remember when I went to Riyadh, there was this new student when I was studying. This was my second year. A new student was coming. He just came from like Taiwan or something, or one of those countries, and he needed a ride from the airport to the apartment buildings of the students. So the taxi driver, harami, right? he charged them 500 riyals. Now, those of you who've been to Saudi Arabia, 500 riyals. How much is 500 riyals? It's like $160 or something, right? It's nowhere near that. Like I think 40 riyals, maybe 30 riyals. But the guy doesn't know, he's new. And the driver took advantage of him, right? So sometimes not both parties are aware. And when people sell you supplements online, do you know that actually there's a vitamin D in there? Anybody here go home and test it? Is there a way to find out? So what happens here? You have to trust the other party. You say, okay, it's FDA approved, but even that, there's a lot of corruption, right? So that's why Sharia comes and says that you have to, there has to be a benefit, right? And if there's no benefit, and the benefit is not as you described, then it goes back on the person. They said here, مبادلة مال ولو في الذمة. إيش يعني في الذمة? في الذمة. They say في الذمة يعني even if it's something like for the future, not on the spot right now, right? مبادلة مال بمال ولو في الذمة. يعني for example, you tell someone, I want to buy your Honda Civic. Okay, here's 3,000. I'll take the car and I'll give you 2,000 next week. That still counts. ولو في الذمة. Or for something later, like when people make orders, like manufacturers, right? Sometimes you pay, right? You pay for something, and then you get the thing after. Isn't that what happens? يعني أنت for Amazon, what do? When you pay, it drops from the roof in front of you. What happens? Yeah, if you have Prime, 2 days. If you don't have Prime, 5-6 days. This is في الذمة. This is later. Okay, في ذمتي, It's on my back. Yani I'm going to give it to you. Yeah. They say وَلَوْ فِي الذِّمَّةِ. So here they included the things that are not on the spot. Okay. Of course, except riba. That's why he said riba. Remember? Because riba nasi'a, you might say, according to this definition, then the gold for the money that I mentioned before is okay. But that's why in the end of the definition he says غَيْرِ رِبًا وَقَرْض. Okay. So مبادلة مال ولو في الذمة. Okay. أو منفعة. So we have money, we have a commodity, and we have a manfa'a. In English, usufruct. I don't know if you ever heard this word. The first time I heard it, I'm like, okay, nobody used this word. Usufruct is a manfa'a. What is a usufruct? Manfa'a. It's a benefit you get from something. Can I sell you a benefit? Can I sell you a benefit? Yeah. Give me an example of that. Huh? I have a parking. Yeah. I have a parking spot in front of my house. I don't use it. So I charge you for you to park. Am I selling you something physical? What am I selling you? A manfa'a. I'm selling you a benefit. Or you have to go to the supermarket. Okay? And if you go around walking, it takes you 40 minutes. If you go from behind my house, it's 5 minutes. I'll be like, you know what? If you just pay me $50 a month, I'll let you go from the back of my. It's my haq, that's my right, okay? And that's a manfa, that's a benefit, right? And so on. So you can exchange money, or a commodity, or a manfa. Does that make sense? Those are the three things that you can have 9 combinations for those, right? So mubadalat mal, the exchange of wealth, even when it's only a guarantee, right, for the future to be given at a later date, or a benefit, perpetually ala ta'bid. What do you mean perpetual ala ta'bid? Yani ala ta'bid yani when I sell you my car and you give me the cash, is this like for 2 weeks? Huh? Or is it something permanent? It's something that is permanent, right? Something that is permanent. As ala ta'bid. Yani you can't come out in 2 years be like, hey man, let's take back your Honda. Give me back those 5,000. You can't do that. Tamam? Unless both parties agree. That's another trade. Tamam? Ala ta'bid. And then he makes an exception. He says, غَيْرِ رِبًا وَقَرْض. Okay? Except riba, okay? Because riba nasi'a, it has to be hand to hand, right? Okay? And qurud, right? Qurud, you can't have a manfa'a on a qard. Yani, what is riba? Riba is a benefit on a loan. Isn't that what riba is? Riba duyun. And so when you go to a bank, okay, when you want to do a conventional mortgage, what are they saying? They're saying, we'll lend you the 600,000, okay, but you have to give 600,000? No, you have to give 600,000 plus a manfa'a, plus a benefit, okay? So in qurud, you're not allowed to do that. The only qard Islamically is a qard hasan, is that a goodly loan, okay? Even if it's not a financial benefit. Like, مثلا, someone says to you, you come to them and be like, man, I need $10,000. Be like, oh yeah, sure, man. I'll lend you $10,000, but you need to do you need to shovel my snow, my lawn, for the rest of your life. Okay, is that allowed? No, because here is a manfa'a that's coming with it, and that would be considered riba, right? طيب. So a sale can be for a specific item that is present. We said, like for example, I sell you an item in my shop, or a specific item that is absent, fi dhimma, I sell an item to be delivered at a later date from the warehouse, for example, or a benefit of some sort, usufruct, right? I allow someone to tour my garden for a fee or something. And people do that, right? They have like those traditional houses or something, and they become like a museum or something, and they charge a fee for that. Wallahu ta'ala alam. The last thing that we have here is the pillars of transactions. We can cover that next week, inshallah, because I think it's time for iqama. Iqama is in 2 minutes, correct? Right? 2 minutes? Yeah. So we'll end here. If there's like any question, quick question, we'll take one question and then we'll do the adhan iqam. Tafadhal. Is rent control haram? Rent control, what do you mean by rent control? Like the government puts. Yeah, if there's a maslahah from the government, if the government sees that there is a benefit from putting a ceiling on rent, for example, okay, an economic benefit يعني for the people, then it's allowed. ما في مشكلة on that, yeah. Put a ceiling on profits or on rent, etc. Like it's done in some places like BC, and I think BC and Toronto. Some places there's you can't increase rent. Here you can increase it as much as you want. The landlord can come and say, "Khalas, I'm going to increase it 40%," and it happened for some people, right? But in other provinces, it's not allowed. That goes back to the government. Wallahu ta'ala. Jazakumullah khair. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.